Get started. So, you guys probably get Paul Dietrich's commentary, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today. The latest commentary that came out, if you haven't looked at it, I think it's important to know what's happening in our world and what's happening around us. Not so you can be the expert, but just so you know, right? And so you have talking points. And if your clients ask you something, you can answer that. Zach and I host a podcast every Monday morning, and this was our topic for our podcast this week. So I thought it bared repeating. And just in case you didn't read it, right? We all see the highlights and the I was like, what do you call that? The titles, right, on the screen and the subsections, but sometimes we don't look at what it actually says. So I just want to highlight this for you today, and then we can talk about it and talk about some opportunities with our clients. So his title is Soft Landing or Recession. You decide. And you guys that follow Paul, that know Paul, you've heard this from him for a while, right? And sometimes you're like, are you right, dude? Like, is this actually going to happen? Like, I've heard you say this for a minute, but everybody's having record highs and the market's like going gangbusters. So what's really going on here? And so one of the things that he says is that obviously, he talks about pumping the $12.5 trillion into the economy over the last 5 years that the government has artificially pushed off, but not canceled the next recession. But I think it's important to understand why he says that, right? Like, obviously, we have economic indicators, things like that, that are showing us that this recession is coming. But also, and if Zach were here, he'd play along with my game. He used to be a history teacher, right? Before we got into this world, Zach taught social studies and science. And one of the things about history that we all know is that history has a tendency to. Can anybody finish my question for me?
Repeat itself.
Repeat itself, right? So if history has a tendency to repeat itself, then we should study history. So maybe we can make the repetition that we know is going to come better, right? Or at least prepare for it. Again, we do that podcast every Monday, and a couple of weeks ago, that was our question: was, are you prepared? And I think that's a very valid question to ask your clients right now. Are you prepared? We might have a soft landing. Everything that we're going to talk about today says that's not the case, but we might have a soft landing. And if we do, great, you win, right? But what if we don't? Are you prepared? Everyone knows that from 2008 to 2018, that's what we call the lost decade, right? Why do they call it the lost decade? It's because when our money went down in 2008, it took most people until 2018 to become level again. And that's when they started earning money. That's a problem. If you wait 10 years to get back to where you are today, do you have 10 years? Are you prepared? Can you wait? If you're 20, yes. If you're 30, yes. Maybe even if you're 40, yes. If you're 50 or 60, no, right? If you're 50 and you don't get back to today's value until you're 60, well, that's 10 years of growth that you've lost on your money that you're not going to have towards retirement. If you're 60, that's 10 years longer that you have to work, right? So are you prepared? Is it going to happen? What does it look like? So let's talk about history. So over the last 100 years, which is a long time, right, of data that we have in the US, historically, the growth and economic expansion cycles run for an average of 6 to 9 years, followed by an 18-month to 2-year recession and economic contraction, right? Globally, we can trace the same cycle, right, the same cyclical nature of our economies back over 411 years through the London and Amsterdam stock exchanges, and everything still holds true. So because of this $12.5 trillion pump in our economy, we're in the longest bull market that we've been in since the history of our time, right? For 15 years, our market has been on a tear. We've been going up. Remember, I said typically every 6 to 9 years, we have a recession. We're 15 years in. If for the last 100 years, we've had a recession every 6 to 9 years in the US, and for the last 411 years in the world, chances are we're going to have a recession, right? So, big question is hold on, let me meet some people. big question is, are you prepared? Right? Can you handle that? What does that look like? And that's what you need to talk about when you're talking to your clients. They hear all of this, right? You know, in 3 weeks, we have an election. It is a major election. I think, regardless of how it goes, we're going to have volatility, and we're going to see volatility in the market, whether it's immediate or whether it's, December, January time. I still think we're going to see volatility. So, couple of questions. It says, again, after the election, no matter who's elected, it's highly improbable that any major new stimulus or government programs will be passed by Congress, because regardless of who's elected, we're probably going to be split 50-50, right, between Republicans and Democrats. And unfortunately, they're just not working together right now, right? So that means that we're probably not passing any new stimulus or spending bills. Just keep scrolling through this really quickly. I thought this was really interesting to talk about as well. So we talk about unemployment, right? Unemployment is a big indicator for our market and for our economy. And are things getting better, or are they getting worse, right? And our unemployment numbers have been going down, which is good. That means more people are employed. But when you look at it and when you read about it, more people are employed through temporary jobs, right? So what does that look like? What does that mean? Does anybody know what September 30th typically is? You may know.
Wasn't that when all the jobs that the government had created, they end basically, they ended on September 30th?
Kinda. So ultimately, September 30th is the end of the fiscal year, right? And that means that the budget that they have put in place has to be spent or lost for the next year, right? So all this money that they've allocated to temporary jobs, all this money they've allocated to everything, had to be spent by September 30th. It's kind of a use it or lose it thing. Well, if somebody gives me a budget of $100 million and tells me to spend it or lose it, I'm going to spend it, right? Anybody's going to spend it. That's what they're going to do, because that's how people are. That's who people are. That's what our government is very good at. Instead of saying, we don't need this money, they're going to spend it so they get it earmarked next year. The problem is part of the money that was earmarked to be spent by September 30th was stimulus money. And that stimulus money was all the money that we printed during COVID. So that money will not come back in the budget next year, regardless of if they spend it or not. So they spent a ton of money by the end of September 30th to create a lot of jobs. A lot of those jobs are temporary jobs, right, in our economy and through our country. And the question is, will those jobs remain? So when we look at unemployment, our unemployment numbers actually went down, which is good. But did they really go down, right? Did they really go down? Are those temporary jobs going to turn into permanent jobs? I don't think any of us know that yet. But kudos to the political game and the world that we're in. And I'm sure, like I said before, both Democrats or Republicans would have done the same thing. But we won't know until after the election, right? So the jobs, we look like we have this strong, stable economy, but we won't know. We won't know what happens and if that stays in place until after that. Probability says that these companies that got the money to hire these temporary individuals will not have the money to sustain them, right? So probability says our unemployment will go back up, meaning people will lose those jobs, and then it will be a sign of our economy. So when you're looking at things like that in the news, and you're looking at the market, and you're listening to things, and I tell this to my kids all the time, just ask questions, just ask why, just ask how. Not because people are trying to deceive you, but it's important for you to just look around, right? Keep your eyes open, look around, and listen from multiple news sources, right? So you can kind of pick and choose the things that are continuous, so you kind of have an idea of what's actually happening. So Paul says that the stimulus money is directly pushed off the next recession, creating the temporary soft landing that we're experiencing now. I was like, where am I? I think I was already there. I'm just scrolling through this so I can kind of give you this. You also have the Consumer Confidence Index, right? The Consumer Confidence Index will tell you, is the economy really as healthy as everyone wants to believe? So is the consumer sector expanding or contracting. Consumer confidence dropped in September to near bottom of the narrow range that's prevailed over the past 2 years. September's decline in the consumer confidence index was the largest since August of 2021, and all five components of that index deteriorated. So even though our market's on a tear, even though our unemployment's going down, as a consumer, we don't feel as hopeful and as positive as those numbers are making it look like we do. And this is a big indication of a recession that's coming. So let me see if there's anything else I want to talk about. So ultimately, I think that's the question for our clients. I think the question for our clients is, hey, this information's out there, it's printed, it's talked about. If you get on these, Fox Business News or CNBC or all these different syndicated news shows and listen to what they're saying, they're all talking about that. But just yesterday or the day before, we had an all-time high, all-time market close, right? So you hear people talking about the recession, but everybody's still winning. And so natural tendency is when we're winning, right? Think about if you ever have gambled in Vegas. I'm not a gambler because I hate losing and I don't feel like I'm good enough to like gamble intelligently, so I can't stand it. But you guys have seen at least the movies if you haven't experienced it yourself, right? When people are gambling and they're winning, they keep betting, right? And I think that's kind of where we are right now in this false sense of security that it's been good for a really long time, because it has been good for a really long time. And everything that we see every single day are these new benchmarks, right? These new floors of, best performance that we've had in forever, and all of these different things. So I think the question for your clients is, are you prepared? Do you understand what they're talking about? Are you worried about your money? And again, it's going to depend on where they are in their financial life, in their retirement life. But then let's just kind of talk for a few minutes. So if someone is concerned about a recession and about, 2008, 2001, something like that happening, what are their options? What are their choices with us? Like what do we have that we can help them with that might manage some of that volatility? And probably we're talking about lump sum money. When we do a financial needs analysis, we're looking for two things. Gail, you can't answer, but can anybody tell me what the two things are that we're looking for in a financial needs analysis?
Monthly money and lump sums.
Monthly money and lump sums. There you go. Exactly, right? So we're probably talking about lump sums when we're talking about the volatility of the market and what people are worried about. So what are our options for our clients to help protect them against volatility in the market?
Hey, Kimberly, I was just going to say something kind of about what you were talking about a
Okay.
minute ago. In case you don't know, I'm coming back from an event where North American sponsored the event. And I look forward for you guys winning contest and being there too. But what I wanted to bring up was very interesting, spirited conversations with a smart sales force, peppering them with lots of questions, as you can imagine. And there's a couple of products that they have that are good products, but they're caps, which is the maximum money you can make, is a little lower than some other places. But it's interesting to hear the people who create the products go over what they're doing. And it's interesting. And I think you can kind of, it goes right in what Kimberly's talking about, is they're building these things for the long term. It isn't so and so has a cap that's a little bit higher, or somebody has another bell or whistle that looks a little higher for a year. These companies have to build these products to pay when people need them 10, 20, 30 years from now. And so I love the fact that we are with companies that are taking all these things into consideration that Kimberly's talking about. The fact that, looking at things on the long term, looking at things, and that's important. I mean, because when you're talking to your client, if a client is trying to get the maximum return they can in 1 year to pull their money out, I'll be honest with you, we're not their company. That's not what we do. Matter of fact, if you try to do that with almost any of our products, you're being irresponsible and you're not going to be able to be successful. So I think it's important that you understand that, that North America does a great job of pricing things and setting up these products so that they're going to be around for, hundreds of years, which is what we want them to do. So, right now, if we get this information to people, see, right now there are more people wanting to increase their financial control than ever before. We just got to get to those people and challenge those people who aren't. You don't want to scare them, but you want to go get their attention. You almost got to be Paul Revere. Paul Revere is known forever of, you know, you know, being able to, save us during the British invasion or during the Revolutionary War, talking about the British are coming. Well, we've got to literally be the ones that are out teaching people and inspiring people and warning people. We're warners. We're financial warners and entrepreneurial warners that are so important that people hear this message. So hopefully that gives you a little insight along those lines that she was talking about. And by the way, why do we go into these details? They're to create your confidence. She talked about the consumer confidence indexes. Well, I want the field force confidence to go through the roof. That you got these incredible products, that you got people like John Courier and Matt Salvatore and Al Zuckerman and all these guys from these different companies that are here for you to provide all the support you need for world-class companies to do great things for people. So I think that that's just some perspective that you need to have on that.
Sorry,
Kimberly?
I had a little catastrophe
Yes.
here, so I'm not sure what you just said because I just walked back in and I can't breathe because I've been running.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant. No,
Good news is we
but
live streamed it to YouTube, so I can watch you later.
yeah, but it's just going back. The bottom line is that these companies listening to how they price their things, and
Mhm.
they're building their companies and products according to all the facts you just gave out. They make decisions, fiscal decisions for our clients long term based on those things that you just talked about.
Yeah, I agree. And it is fascinating, we've been in this world for a long time. Obviously, Jody has too. I remember going to F&G to their event in Fort Lauderdale a couple of years ago, and they were talking about how they hedge all their investments and things like that. And it's things that we don't really hear a lot. And probably if you're brand new, you're like, I have no idea what you just said. But as you hear longer, it's kind of like a Pandora's box, right? The more you know, the more you want to know. And you kind of become a dork and fascinated by it. Gail cracks me up because the longer she's here, she's like, oh my gosh, and she'll tell somebody something and I start laughing because probably a year ago she would have thought that was too fantastic. Right? So the more you know, the more you want to know.
Oh, I completely geek out on some of this information. But to answer
Okay.
your question, you said something about, what products do we have? I think for obviously suitability has to be determined, but for somebody, if they, are early 50s and they have a lump sum of money to put somewhere, I think like the F&G annuity that gives the 15% bonus is a good fit. Especially with the concerns of what might happen here in the market. So I think that's a good option. I think if they've got a few more years, but they might need to draw an income sooner rather than later. I think the Nationwide and Nexus with a 30% bonus on the income is a good fit for a lot of people. And that way they don't have to worry about it living their money.
How does that protect against volatility, either one of them?
Well, because they're indexed annuities, so they had that floor
What does
of,
that mean?
just if the market goes down, they don't gain anything, but their money is protected. They don't lose a dime.
And they reset that floor every year or
Correct.
every crediting anniversary. So if they're in a 2-year, then obviously it reset every 2 years. But that's great, right? So perfect example, whether it's Nationwide or a Nexus or Athene or Lincoln or Allianz or all of the companies that we have that offer the nation or North American, I'm sorry, Corebridge, all of the companies that we have that offer the fixed index annuities, they're fantastic. They help your clients hedge against that volatility. Maybe all of their money doesn't need to be there, but maybe a big chunk of it does. So especially if they're closer towards retirement, in that 50 plus range, and you see that lump sum of money, you need to talk about it. You need to talk about, are you prepared? The same conversation that we have. And, Jody made a great comment the other day. He said, anything, I think it might have been in St. Louis actually, when Matt Salvatore came to St. Louis with us and Jody. Last Monday and Tuesday, and Jody said, listen to everything that Matt says, and everything he says from a sales question is also a recruiting question, right? So that "are you prepared" question is a question you could easily ask about life insurance and living benefits, right? Are you prepared? Can you afford a diagnosis? What would happen if? So again, saying, are you prepared if the market tanks, right? If we have a recession, do you have time to wait and to ride it back up? Are you prepared? But you can also say that same question from a recruiting perspective. Are you prepared? What if you lose your job? Do you have enough income? What if you can't save enough to retirement? Are you prepared? What's your plan? So remember, today, and probably every time we talk to you, we're just trying to arm you with conversations and questions and tools and things like that. So when you're out there talking to people, you have things to say, right? You have questions to ask them, and you don't have to be the expert. You don't have to be the expert, but if you ask them questions, then you know what they're looking for, and you can take a pause and go find it for them. I have clients all the time, and they ask me a question. I'm like, I'll find out, because I have no idea, right? So then I go and do a quick Google search or call someone in our network of people, and we figure it out, and we figure it out together. The key is really just to ask questions. So outside of an indexed annuity, because that is definitely one way to manage volatility, what else could we do? Not Gail. Anybody know? Are y'all still there? Are you my friends?
IUL.
We could do an IUL, but right now, and we definitely could do an IUL. So I say we're talking about lump sum money, but we could do an IUL with lump sum money. So yes, absolutely, Dina. And it would be similar to manage that volatility risk to like an annuity, right? Because we have that guaranteed floor and the ability to track the upswings of the market, and every year or every crediting anniversary, we reset that floor. So definitely that's an option.
It's a great opportunity for Zach and wealth format system with Paul Dietrich.
It is a great opportunity for Paul Dietrich. I want to come back to that in a second, James. What were you going to say, Dina?
You focus on a 50 and up market, but if we have customers on 30, 40 years old, we definitely need to talk about IUL or youngest.
Yes, for sure. But and the reason I said 50 and older is usually those are the ones that are most concerned with the volatility, right? Because they don't have time to wait for it to come back to grow again, right? But you have some 30-year-olds, some 40-year-olds, some people like that want to protect their money. All right, so I'm coming back to you in a minute, James, but Tim O'Rourke is joining us. Please, 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 if you can, turn on your cameras just for a minute before I let him in so he sees all your beautiful faces, and we can all say happy birthday to him. I won't make you sing it unless you want to. All right, y'all aren't playing my game. Come on, I see you. Yay, yay. I don't care where you are unless you're naked. Don't turn your cameras on if you're naked. Let's keep that out of it. All right, anybody else? Nobody else turn their cameras on? All right, are y'all going to sing with me, or we just say happy birthday?
We'll sing. You just
Okay,
go
you
1, 2,
start it,
3.
Jody. Ready?
All right, tell me when he's on.
It's coming in right now. Hey, Tim, how are you? Can you hear us? I see you, but I don't see you. Tim O'Rourke, can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh.
Tim, 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, guys.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday to
you.
Happy birthday,
to
Tim.
Tim.
Happy birthday
to you.
And and many more.
And that's on YouTube for the rest of your life. So, you know.
I love the
Yeah,
rhythm.
yeah,
That was
I
great.
I
mean,
like it. It
Yeah,
was
I love the
strong.
many more.
we can
Sound like
always
Bob.
say that that is not our specialty. We can handle your money, but we will not sing to you while we do so.
Well, Tim's coming off being at the same event that I've been able to be at. So Tim, thank you for being on, and I know you're at the airport, so take a few minutes. And Kimberly just went over in pretty good detail in the conversation off of Paul's last letter, so you can just
Oh,
kind of
good.
know that we had a little backdrop of that. So thank you for being on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, super. Yeah, and actually it was a really good letter. Let me talk about the 08-09 recession, the Great Recession, because I think there's some interesting differences of what's going on right now, because the parallels are quite striking, but also quite different. What we saw back then was a combination of what I would call predatory lending. There was, that was back when mortgage brokers were loaning money to low income people that couldn't afford those loans, and they couldn't sustain, making those payments on the houses. Really, it was in the housing market, and they created this huge bubble. And I think a lot of people were caught off guard when this was going on. I mean, nobody really saw it happening. Not Congress, not the market. Obviously a couple insightful people did. And while this bubble was occurring, they had the MBSs, the mortgage-backed securities, and the CDOs, which that's one of the things AIG got caught up in. If you remember AIG's, this is after Hank Greenberg left. AIG kind of got caught up in those CDOs, which are collateralized debt obligations, and they were packaging them, selling them on the secondary market out of Europe, and that's kind of caused AIG's collapse, which was colossal at the same time. And the government wasn't really watching any of this; they weren't overseeing it or regulating it. That these people weren't qualified for these mortgages, and which really led to this whole subprime mortgage collapse, and built up all these these mortgages and banks, which caused the fall of Lehman Brothers at the same time, back in 2008, and so that burst pretty much across the whole globe. I mean, that started this domino effect. And deflation. So let's talk about deflation for a second, because we all always talk about inflation and how the target inflation by the Fed is 2%, right? And that's kind of the goal of where inflation is. And this is why we're able to print money the way we are. The only problem with the printing machine that Congress is and and the federal government is that we print money now at such a pace that we are pushing, I call it pushing the cart down the road, of we got to pay the piper at some point. And it is the elephant in the room that we're creating this debt monster. 35.5 trillion, I think, is about where the number is right now. That we're now paying $1 trillion in interest on that debt. And one of the reasons interest rates have to come down is we've got to lower the cost basis on that debt. Excuse me. And so you have this dynamics of what's going on in the market. And Paul talks about it in this last market analysis in a lot of different perspectives of this infusion of capital, which is pretty much put off or delayed the next correction as he talks about it. And because of all this money put in the market, put in the hands of consumers, because consumers represent, like you said, 80% of the spending pretty much that gets, buy goods and services and all these things. And so it's complicated. And when you put it on the world market, with China, Europe, Asia, US, Mexico, All these different components go into this big worldwide market thing. You know, we're just building this huge bubble up. So now we've got all this has been going on now in Congress with this $12.5 trillion that's been spent over the last 5 years. You've got this huge buildup now of 1.9 trillion deficit spending, and 87% of the budget now is being spent on money that basically can't be cut anywhere. You got Social Security, Medicare, government, defense, the interest on our spending. And so the rest of the money out there, the 13%, is really going to run the government and things. So there's no way we can get out of this spiral. And at some point, you know, with valuations where they are and tech leading this whole charge, you know, NVIDIA, the tech stocks, you know, it just keeps getting worse. And so this is why I think, this is my personal opinion here, I think we're creating one of the biggest bubbles we've ever had. And when it pops, it's going to be a pretty abrupt drop in the markets. And this is why, if you're in the market at all, you know, my only counsel to anybody out there is you got to be in quality kind of stocks that are run by good management teams, you know, good companies. This is why Warren Buffett has always done good throughout history. If you look at the performance of his organization, Berkshire Hathaway, throughout the decades. I mean, the guy's returned 20% per year compounded. I mean, who does that? You know, I mean, that's beat S&P, that's beaten the Dow, and beaten all the indexes over time because he invests in good quality companies. So the moral of this whole story is we're going to see cycles of corrections in markets. We saw it in 01, 02. We saw, you know, obviously the Great Depression or the Great Recession in 08, 09. We're going to see this one come out. You know, everybody's kind of forecasting it for sometime in 2024. Obviously, it's being delayed because the amount of capital has been put out there. It's going to happen. I think sometime in 2025 has been my guess and Paul's guess probably. But it's going to happen, and it's good. You know, we need to flush it out. We need to clean out the markets. But on the job front, this is the funny part, is we haven't had any job creation, full-time job creation, in quite some time. So this is what plays so well in our category, is part-time jobs out there. That's what seems to be, everybody is playing into more and more part-time jobs. And Jody and I were just at this North American awards trip that they had, and the more people we talked to, even a lot of the people there, Jody, were part-time winners out there. I mean, I was talking to Suman at the meeting right there before I was leaving, and it was amazing. He qualified for this thing. He's a professor, and that's his full-time job. And he is so excited to be a part of HGI. And when I first met him, it was at the Convention of Champions, and he qualified for this thing. And now he is like, I wish somebody would have told me about this earlier. And when he first got into it, he was like, you know, this is okay. You know, I'm kind of going to see what it's about. But when people get introduced to what we're doing and the quality of the products, the quality of the people, the leadership, people like Jody and Hubert, obviously, the architect of the system here that we have, and the people on this call. I mean, you all represent the heart and soul of who we are, you know, and you're able to tell the story and infuse the confidence and the passion and what we're all about. And you meet people and in the leadership roles here, and you get inspired and know what's going on generally in the market, in the jobs market especially, that people are looking for secondary jobs. You know, they're looking for $650 extra, like Jody was talking about today. Jody, you know what I'm talking about. And all of a sudden, you know, it changes people's lives, you know, and the backdrop of what's going on in the economy behind it, to understand the why people are out there looking for things like that. That's the story I'm trying to tell everybody today. is there's a lot of reasons why the economy is where it is today and why we're going to have this correction and why you need to be out telling the story because you don't know what people are facing out there. And so it's your mission. It really is your passion and your mission to get out there. You're the lucky ones to be on these kind of calls and hear this stuff and to be around people like this that are telling you how, how to present it, how to go out and talk about it, how to do it. And then your why is something you got to create yourself. So it's just important stuff to keep reminding and reselling yourself and reselling everybody in your team. I think that's the important message here. So I'll turn it back to you, but I just wanted to kind of deliver that thought to you all today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tim. You know what he's talking about, guys. And I know you got to get on your plane, so we'll see you at home. But what Tim's talking
Thanks,
about was, you bet, thank you, buddy. And what Tim's talking about is that there was a gentleman who was on HGI TV live 2 Mondays ago. Real sharp guy, Indian gentleman, young guy, good looking guy. And he said the reason he joined the company was because he needed $650 to pay one bill every month. That's why he joined the company. Now this guy's made 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, and just won this huge contest to be up here with us at the Four Seasons. So, what we do for people is epic. It's timely. It's the most timely thing that I've ever witnessed. And to wrap it up with a business opportunity that we have is it's never before. But I want to create urgency because it won't always be this way. It won't always be this easy to get people's attention. So right now, you got to plant in the spring to be ready for the winter. You got to do that. And so right now is that time. I heard the analogy that you want to start building the ark. What you got to do, you can't wait till it's the bad times are in. I mean, I have so many people who call me wanting to know, can they get a policy with living benefits? And I know when they call me, it's because they had some health diagnosis and they're like, is it too late? Yeah, it might be. Or you may have your money in places that aren't ready for the market correction. And then they call us after that. And you can't, there's no silver bullet to make up. There is no shortcut. And I think one of the things I really want to push and have people understand is that at some point you've got to go build something that's going to take you where you want to go and to protect you. And that's what we offer. That's what we bring to the table. Kimberly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the business opportunity for all of us has changed our lives, and it can for everyone else around us if we just open our mouths and say something. I started because I needed $500 a month. I was paying for daycare, right? We all have those stories. I didn't start in this world to leave teaching and completely change everything I did. I started because I needed extra money. I didn't have a lot of extra time, right, to go punch a time clock somewhere. I think it's interesting what Tim said, that the recession is coming, right? I think we could all probably agree with that. But he also said that it's a good thing. And it is a good thing. Our economy needs cleansing. We need to right the stage, right? But it's only a good thing if you're prepared, right? So we go back to that same conversation. Are you prepared? Are your clients prepared? Can they afford the lost decade? I'm not saying it'll happen again, but what if it does, right? So it has to be our own personal responsibility as our own, financial stewards, but also our clients. They have to understand that nobody can fix it other than them. But it's our responsibility to talk to them about it and give them solutions and kind of be that buzzing fly in their ear enough that they're like, stop, stop, stop. And finally, like, okay, fine, right? And they just, hopefully they do it before it's too late, and they at least diversify what they're invested in. So we talked about IUL, we talked about indexed annuity. James mentioned wealth format system. James, I don't know if you're there and you want to unmute, or if you just want me to talk. Can't see you because you're all hidden over here. Are you going to talk? Well, you can interrupt me if you do.
Yeah,
Go
I'm
ahead.
here. What's up?
Oh, okay, perfect. So how would wealth format system, obviously our models are managed by Paul Dietrich, right? So how would that protect our clients' money against volatility? Why would you say that?
Why would wealth format system protect our money against volatility with Paul Dietrich?
Hmm.
Well, because Paul Dietrich brings the Merrill Lynch Morgan Stanley touch to middle America. When middle Americans would otherwise not have access to a Merrill Lynch Morgan Stanley, Paul is that. And what I mean by that is, as the chief financial strategist or chief investment strategist over B. Riley Wealth Management, he oversees 24 billion assets under management, which is kind of a big deal. And if I'm going to put my money in with someone, I want to know that that person knows what they're doing. And the fact that he does the stock ticket reporting for Merrill Lynch and tells them where to put their money, I'm going to put my money with him. And especially with, I think it was back in 2001, 2002 in the dot-com crash, when the market was down, whatever percentage it was,
A
46,
lot.
53,
Yeah.
a lot. He was, he was, I think, up a few percent in 2001, 2002 during the top dot-com crash. And then in 2008, 2009, like Tim just referenced, the economy was down, 401ks were 201ks, but Paul was only down, I think, 5 or 6%. So I'll take 5%, 5 to 6% down over 45 or 55% down all day, every day. So, and
And
plus,
I would
and again,
argue,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and there's the whole liquidity aspect. It's still a place you can put your money and still have access to it in the event that you may need it. So I like that option, for the client, especially in today's times where people are tight. People want access to liquidity more than ever before. So I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just going to say, I would argue, even better than Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch or Edward Jones or somebody like that. A lot of those companies kind of play that long game, right? Set it and forget it and ride it out until the end. Or they put you in target date funds, right? Target date funds means I'm going to retire in 2050. So I'm in a target date 2050. And if any of you guys start looking at people's investment portfolios, you'll see that. And what that means is that fund is managing my risk tolerance based on my age and my retirement date. So when I'm young, it's super aggressive. And as I get older, it automatically changes me to more conservative, right? And it does that for me. Paul does that himself, right? We call that active money management. And he doesn't do it based on your age, he does it based on the model that you're invested in, right? But the difference, I think, is that it's not a set it and forget it strategy. When he needs to be defensive, he can be defensive. You heard Tim say just a second ago, too. He thinks the market's going to have a big bubble, right? He thinks this is the biggest bubble we've ever created, and we're going to see that happen. I can tell you, I'm personally invested in Paul or with Paul, or he's managing my assets. You guys know what I mean. And probably a lot of you guys are as well. But he's shorting the market. And if anybody doesn't know what that means he's betting that the market will go down. And so right now, while the market goes up, that portion of my money isn't really earning anything because the market's not going down, right? But when the market does go down, it is an inverse relationship. So that portion of our investment is going to skyrocket because he's betting against it. Does that make sense? So you want someone like that. You heard Tim say how complicated it is. Obviously, he and Jody just came back from North America and talking about how they plan these products, how they plan these caps, how they do all of these things for their clients and, for the future of their company and for the future of your clients' money. If it's complicated for them, right? And they have some of the smartest minds in the world that work with them, actuaries and all these crazy math brain people, then how hard do you think it is for us to make the right choices? And how much harder do you think it is even for your clients to make the right choices, right? So in my opinion, that's why your clients need advisors who have access to people that make decisions for you. We don't need to know it all. We need to know that whoever we place the money with, whether it's the insurance company for the indexed annuity or it's, wealth format system for Paul's managed strategies through his portfolios, we need to know that whoever is actually managing that money knows it all, right? Or they have people around them that know as much as they can. And I agree with James. I think a lot of times, even if you're at retirement age or you're towards that part, I like to split assets. If somebody has $500,000, I might put 3 or 4, depending on the income that they need, right? For that guarantee for life income in an indexed annuity. And I'm going to put the rest of it with Paul because I want them to have liquidity. I want them to have emergencies. I want them to have access. And I want them to have probably, at least historically speaking over time, a little more growth than they would have had just in their indexed annuity. Tom Hegna calls it play checks and paychecks, right? So if you haven't heard that story, most of us have a job for our entire lives, right? So every 2 weeks we get a paycheck, just like clockwork. I go to work, I get a paycheck every 2 weeks for my entire life. And we spend that paycheck amassing as much money as we can. So at retirement, we can play, right? Because that's what we want to do. That's the pipe dream we've all been sold, right? So at retirement, I've got this big pot of money, but instead of playing, I'm worried I'm going to outlive it, right? So my tendency is to shrink and to not live the life of my dreams and have this perfect, amazing retirement. So the paychecks and playchecks conversation says, let's take a fixed indexed annuity and let's put as much money in there as necessary to create your paycheck. Right? It's going to pay me every 2 weeks or once a month or once a year, whatever you set it up as, but it's going to be my paycheck that I know I can count on for the rest of my life. That's not money I'm using. It's money that's earmarked to give me an income stream when I'm not working. But the rest of it, let's put it somewhere else and let's have play checks, right? Let's go on vacation. Let's take a cruise around the world. Let's go watch our grandkids play, whatever our dreams are during retirement. Let's have that money working for us and have the liquidity to give us the flexibility to make those decisions. So then we have both of that taken care of. And typically, if it were me, that's how I would plan for my clients. If they have enough, if they don't have enough, I think it has to go to a paycheck because I think that's much more important for them to know that they can pay for their life for the rest of their life than take a cruise around the world. They just need to figure out how to make more money for that cruise around the world. But I think both of those options can help your clients protect against volatility. So the question that you ask when you go out there is, are you prepared? And then have a conversation. Like I said, read that. You all have the article from Paul. So I just skimmed it. But go read it. Go really look at it and read it. He's got some charts and graphs in there that are and he doesn't write, some of these come out and you're like, I have no idea what he says, right? He doesn't write so complicated that you won't understand what he's saying. Like it's very general. I don't know that it's third grade level, but it's very normal people level. So I think you can understand that. But Jody, any last words? Guys, any questions?
Yeah, I was just gonna say on this is that guys, I want you to understand, I want your confidence up and I want you to attack because whenever you're selling good things, a lot of times people put off responding, but when they're scared, they might act on especially on some money things. For example, we had what's called an economic summit. And I want to get back to having these to where, I personally think every team should be having a how money works seminar, core financial concepts or something, just teaching. Because when you teach, it gets people interested. But we had Paul Dietrich come to the Polo Club in Atlanta. Charlene helped set it up, but I think we had over about 100 people there. I can't remember, but it was a lot of people.
It was a lot.
And Paul came and spoke. These are the people that were listening to him, and his knowledge was important. He's a very learned person, very good person.
Jody, I think you're in a bad spot.
And on a good year, he may do 20, 25, 30%. But so does most everybody else because it's not that hard when it's good. But like James had mentioned, when he's told them, and I'll get the exact numbers so you guys do know what you're talking about and can say it accurately. But I remember there was 2 years, in one of them he barely lost any money, and the other one he made a little bit of money. But it's when the market was down, 40% one year and 50% the other. That's when everybody sat up. That's when the people decided to take their checkbook out and said, "Here you go." Was what he did. during those times, when the waters got choppy. And so people love that. I mean, in today's world, let them know we have that. The term that he uses a lot. He's in. It was a combination of what James and Kimberly said, but he's a defensive active money manager. Which means he's aggressive. He's going to get a good bit on the top, but he's famous for not losing money in the downturn. And that plays real well in today's world. He's our guy. That ought to give you tremendous confidence. And then we have people like Zach and Kimberly who really understand this stuff, and others as well, but they really got their arms around it good. And the longer we go, that'll become more and more the future. But right now, just get out, open our mouths to everybody, expose the message to everybody. Let them get on, whether it's what we do for families or a regular bop, and it'll change your life. So thank all of you for being on. Appreciate you. And we really appreciate you, Kimberly, for taking the lead today.
You're welcome. All right,
See you guys.
let's go make money.
1:30. Yep, 1:30 I do a bop for if you have real